Hi, greetings for the day and welcome to our learning journey. This is Divya. I'm so happy and glad that you all have joined for this session on time. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And in today's segment, we're going to be continuing on to the same chapter that's our early childhood language. So, yesterday I had given you a small task to list down the goals. Okay, so if you have done that, if you have listed your goals, amazing. If you have not done that, I want each one of you all to pause this video at the same time and I want you to list down the goals. Okay, so once you're done with that assignment, I would want all of you to move forward. The second assignment that we actually were discussing is like getting to know some more points, which is going to help us define the difference between the communication and the difference between what is communication and what is speech. Okay, so I wanted all of you to list down on these particular points, like what is communication and what is speech and how do they differ. So these were the two assignments that we actually were working upon in yesterday's session. Okay, so if you have not done that, I would repeat again because I want each one of you all to pause it, complete the assignment and then move forward, because how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So let's move forward. So in this segment, we got to understand that what is communication. We understood the understanding of it. We also worked upon the pre-speech forms of communication. Isn't it? Communication is a wonderful medium to express your thoughts, to express your feelings, to express your emotion. So that means speech is by no means the only form of communication. Now we got an understanding. But most of the people, they use it. So that's why speech is considered to be the best form for many purposes. Why? Because when you are trying to communicate within a group of people who speak the same language, perhaps, or who have the same speech or the same language, it becomes much more easier to communicate what you're trying to feel or what you're trying to express, what your thoughts about. So that's the reason most of them consider the speech being one of the best form to communicate. Okay, so thereby it is more widely understood than any other means of communication. I could say that. Okay, now you got the difference. So speech is one of the medium to communicate. Okay, but both of them are totally different. But what are the other forms of communication that can be best understood? Gestures, your face and your body movements that show different emotions people understand. You can also use sign language. Sign language is generally used by most of the deaf people. Okay, because they want, or we want them to understand what you're trying to speak. They use the sign language to communicate with the entire world, and we all can understand what they're saying. And if you have learned the sign language, it becomes much more easier for you to communicate with a person who does not understand the language. We could use the other sources like arts, the music, the dance, the painting. Even you could write symbols of the words, and that's going to be one of the other forms of communication. How simple is that? Isn't it? Now, what are the other forms? If you have known any other forms that you can communicate with another person, please list it down. Okay, so having said that, let's move forward. So that means all these forms of communication can be taught as language. So you can teach as a language. Now, say, for example, if I'm talking with the help of signs, that becomes a sign language. If I'm using art as the medium and I want to express everything by communicating through the art, art becomes my language, isn't it? If I want to write everything and if I want to communicate with the other person, my writing becomes the communication medium. If I want to talk, to express my thoughts, how do I feel? Then my speech becomes one of the form of communication. So speech is just one form of the language, isn't it? And that becomes the medium to communicate. So learning to speak is considered to be as the hardest skill. You know why? Because in order to talk or in order to speak, a person should be able to control the voice mechanism. You need to know when to stop, when to control. How do you produce the words? That's more difficult, isn't it? So you need to know, you need to help the child control the voice mechanism. Once you do that, it becomes easier. The second thing, you need to know how to control the muscle of your tongue and the lips. That's very, very important, because every time that there is a combination between your tongue movement, your lip movement, You totally produce a different sound. And that's more important because all of this must work together. Your tongue, your lip, okay, the muscles of your tongue and lip, they have to work together. Only then we will be able to make good sounds. Not good sounds, you will be able to make sounds. Only when you are making good sounds, you're able to combine them together to make meaningful words. And are we done over here? No. The child knows the mechanism to talk. The child knows the mechanism to control the tongue and lips. And the child is able to make sounds and is able to make words. But what about the meaning? They should also know about the meaning of that particular word. So, whoever is teaching them the words or the mechanism to talk, they have to also help them learn the meanings of the words that they're trying to communicate. If I'm just saying please, I have to know the meaning of the word please. The children should understand at what circumstances that I can use this golden word please. If I want to thank someone, the children should know when to use this particular word, like say thank you. Okay, so teach them the meanings of the words and the instances like when these words can actually be used with. Okay, so we're going to be looking a little bit more information in this session. So, how can we help children or the younger infants or young children? How can we help them to develop the language? See, language is something which is interrelated with many other things. It could be interrelated with your psychosocial skills, or it can be integrated with your emotional developmental skills. This is more important. I'll give you an example. Say, for example, when children are like below 2 years or below 1.5 years, they might not be able to talk and communicate. Okay, so we do not give much of the language precedence, but still, the child is like gathering with the other children of the same age group, and if they see one child is playing, the other child will be so emotionally connected. He's liking what the other child is actually trying to do. He wants to socialize with the other children, so he starts crawling closer to them. And when he sees something very attractive over there, maybe the child is playing with a car or turning around the pages of the book, the child is getting connected. So he starts to communicate. Maybe he starts to blabber in case if he knows about some of the, like words and other things, the baby might just point out. I need that. Pointing out is also one form of communication, isn't it? Or the baby might just utter, like blabber something like ooh, ooh, or something like that. So it's again one of the pre-speech. Okay, it's considered to be as one of the pre-speech, pointing out or like blabbering or uttering a particular word or making any kind of a signs. That's also one kind of a pre-speech communication. So there, the baby used these three things which got interrelated, and still he was able to communicate effectively. So I could say that for the language development you could always tend to integrate. So that's when the parent supports them or the elderly supports them. Oh, do you want to play with this toy? Do you want to take a look at this particular book? How amazing, isn't it? Right? When an external influence has been added to it, when a parent actually talks, that is where the child actually picks up the language, he picks up the words, and he might start nodding his head. So that means the child understood everything. The child learned the word. Yes. The mother might repeat, or father might repeat, do you want it? Yes. Do you want it? Yes. And the child might actually utter a word then. He might say yes. Not to the perfect way, but at least he could come closest to the sound of it. How beautiful it is, isn't it? So, this is something which is more important. Whenever you want the younger children to work on the language development, please work more on their language, psychosocial, and the emotional developments because they are very, very interrelated. Create an environment in such a way that you give an opportunity for your child to work on all these three particular points. Okay, but sometimes there are many other external factors which affects this language development. One could be genetic. Okay, what if the parents are not that very, what I could say is they're not well spoken, They do not speak much, they're very reserved. At that particular time, maybe the children can also be very quiet most often. But if the parents are generally like, they are like, outspoken, they talk a lot. So children of their, you can always see in their family that these children actually have better vocabulary. They are very confident when it comes to talking because they have good amount of vocabulary. They know what to talk, they know when to talk, they know how to talk, they know the different instances, they understand the meanings of it. So when we are staying with larger families, wherein we have like children staying with grandparents or the extended families, what happens there? We have many people there, right? At that time, there is so much of exchange of words, there's so much of exchange of the language. The children are like listening to every other person, and they tend to pick up all the words. So genetic factors does matter. The environment at which you're staying at that particular moment does matter. Okay, when you are in a very nuclear family, when both the mom and dad are like going to work, they have a busy schedule, they are spending very less amount of time, and the entire day the baby is with nanny, and the nanny is not communicating to the child for the entire day, there could be some kind of a delay for the baby to pick up the words or to initiate the talking. So that's when you see your language development can be affected, or the rate at which the child picks up the language can be reduced. So work on these particular factors. Okay, so that's going to be helping you a lot. So what can you do? The first thing what you can do is like create a language. I'm not saying you create your new language, rather it's like create a language learning environment. Okay, it could be your own like mother tongue, or people say it's your own native language, right? So you can talk as much as possible, you can speak as much as possible in your own language. When you do that, always encourage your child to also speak. When you're talking, always use gestures and teach your children the gestures. What does it mean? What does that particular word mean? Give them examples of it, make sentences out of it, and you teach them. That is when you get to understand that the children are able to learn better. And that's when the language development will be very, very purposeful. What's more important is checking consistently whether your children are understanding what you're actually trying to speak or talk to. Okay, make sure your child is understanding that. That's the first important task. They need to understand when they're communicating, what am I telling to the other person? Is the other person understanding what am I saying? So they have to understand that. Okay, an instance we're going to have this, a baby cry can be because of multiple reasons, right? We always spoke about, the baby is trying to communicate by the only means of crying. The crying can also be of different cries. Sometimes when they have physical discomfort, when they have pain, the cry could be different. The cry could be high pitched cry, or it could be the low pitched cry, or it could be the piercing screams. But when the child is tired, when the child wants to sleep or has not got enough sleep, there could be low pitched cries. When the child is hungry, the crying could be totally different. It could be like hungry howls, or the child might start to suck their thumb. It could be different. And at the same time, even they could also express if they're not okay. Say, for example, if they've caught up cold, they might be sneezing continuously, or they might be trembling. Or if they're not hungry, maybe they don't want the feed to be continued. Maybe they might push the nipple out of it, right? Sometimes even if the child is not hungry, and if you're trying to feed the food, the child might just like put the food out of the mouth. That's only because the child is not hungry, or the child is satisfied enough. The child does not want it, and he's very clear with that communication. And if he wants something, and if he's not able to reach that object, probably he might point out, and you want the other person to notice or look for it. He's trying to make an effective communication that I want that object, and the other person understands. The moment that you start understanding it, you go for it and you start building a conversation over there. You say, baby, do you want that? Okay, mama's going to pull you this for you and give it to you. Oh, what a lovely toy you're pointing out. It's red in color. So you initiate a conversation. So that means the baby tried to communicate with different forms. So that's more important. And the other person totally understood what the baby was trying to, communicate or tell about it. So for all the major language development, you need to be observing about two aspects: the receptive aspects and the expressive aspects. Receptive is the one that you receive everything, okay, and the expressive aspects is like you can express it out. Okay, the moment that you get all the information, you just can't keep it, right? You need to also express that information out of it. So keep this in mind. So that means for any receptive aspect of language, there could be some kind of a selection. There could be the child will have to recognize the sounds. The child will have to be recognizing the verbal conversations, whatever you have. The child should be able to respond to those sounds or the words that you're actually talking. And then the child should be able to express it in the same language that you have spoken to the child. Okay, maybe today I'm talking in English, maybe tomorrow I might be talking in Kannada or a different language, but you heard me in that language. So you got to recognize the sounds. You got to recognize the verbal recognition. You got to understand the verbalization of what am I trying to say. And you have to express it in the same language. Okay? If I say, how are you in English, you will say, okay, I'm fine. If I say, how are you in a different language, आप कैसे हो? You will be responding in that language. Hey Gedira, you'll respond back to me in that language. So you're going to be expressing in the same language that I spoke. That's the first perspective. It's called the receptive aspect of it. Okay, for infants, how do we work on it? See, they're generally exposed to sounds, right? So when they are sleeping, when they're on the bed, or when they're on the cradle, more often they're exposed to many sounds because the baby has no choice to run around if he likes it, if he doesn't likes it, right? So they're there. So when they're exposed to these multi sounds which they hear, all the sounds are somewhere associated to their sensations. They might like it, they might not like it. If they like, they can find pleasure. If they don't like it, they might start to make faces, or they might even cry, right? So now what did the child do there or the infant do there? They started learning to recognize the sounds. I like this sound or I don't like this sound. The moment that they start recognizing this sound, they're able to work on their characteristics. Oh, it's a pleasant sound, especially when the mother ons the lullabies or when she sings the lullaby. Maybe the baby understands or recognizes the sound and they start paying more attention to it. They start listening more actively to that sound. That is when they develop this sense of recognition. Oh, it's my mother who's singing. Oh, it's my dad who actually came. Oh, it's my grandmother who's actually playing that song for me. It could be anything, any sound. The moment they're able to recognize the sound, they're able to find out their characteristics and they start walking towards the sensory recognition. So, what happened there? The child was able to recognize the sound. So, what now? And how does it help in the language development? It's only because it's important because anything for the speech, see, your speech is directly proportional to your hearing. Okay, only when you start hearing, you will be able to start to talk. So you need to understand this. So when we need to integrate the concepts with the sound, so you need to integrate everything that you see, you hear, you feel, you experience, everything you need to integrate. You have to express it out with sounds. So that means the sensory integration has to happen with the concept formation. And how do we do that? Okay, how do we do that? How do we help rather the child? The infant will have to link the sound that he heard with the sight of the sound that got produced by the object. Now, what happens thus? The early vocalizations, they become this receptive babbles. The more that you started talking to your child, the baby started to receive all of that. And he starts to babble. Say, for example, when you tell like bye bye, maybe the baby might say bye bye, or you say tick tock, or you can say clock. Maybe the child might say tick tock. Okay, so it's like they are trying to, like work on those particular sounds. So that becomes their receptive babbles, and they're able to recognize the syllables. And slowly, the child will be able to produce proper pronunciation. They would be able to recognize and say the entire syllable, breaking the words into multiple syllables and then making them into a bigger word. Everything can be produced. Okay? So at this particular journey, do not forget to also introduce the meaning of it, the purpose of it. Why are you doing? So also educate the children on this. This is very, very important in your early language development. This is very important. Okay? So don't forget to use expressions because expressions can take many forms. Anything that you wanted to introduce new, always have a smiling face because it can create some kind of an external stimuli to the child. Okay, so if the mother or the father is smiling or any other person, okay, they're smiling to the baby and they're talking, the baby might be wondering, oh, this lady is smiling at me. So what should I do? Maybe I should smile back, isn't it? So what was that? That was an external stimuli. Or when I go close to the baby and I start tickling, that's the internal stimuli. The baby might find it nice, but some children they don't like the sense of touch. Okay, so don't trouble them. So this is something which is very personal. Every child might respond to a different kind of a stimuli. Some are okay. Some it is all their own choice. We understand it. The more closer that you stay to the infant or the baby, you understand. Okay, and you will also be able to see if for what stimuli your child is actually trying to express. Okay, so smile is one of such expressions. So in our early childhood language development, it is more important and crucial that learning and engaging for the social relationships is also very important for the effective early childhood language development because the child will start observing the language that is spoken in the environment, the way that you actually talk, the tone of your speech, the syntax that you're trying to build, the usage, the emphasis. Why are you talking? All this is very, very important because the moment that you start teaching your child about this, the parent or the caretaker will be able to work on this particular things also. Now, what about the child? Can they learn it? This is the major question most of us ask. Oh, you spoke so much. Can my child do this? Does he have the capability to do this? Oh, he's so young. He's still 3 months old. He's 5 months old. He's 1 year old. Oh, Divya has still not started going to school. So, should I be talking to him all this? Yes, it's very, very important because the first 5 years is the key for your child's development. Okay, it is going to help your child communicate and work on the language skills. The moment that you take this extraordinary effort and put it, you will see your child will have enormous capacity to learn this language with proper grammatical expressions. And that too, it will happen within the first 2.5 years of age itself. Okay, so never, never underestimate this crucial period. They are young, I understand, but they're just like the sponge. Okay, when you dip them into water, how much of water can the sponge take? It can take the entire amount of how porous it was, isn't it? So child's brain is also like that. So the moment that you start filling up with more amount of knowledge and content, it's not that bombarding with so much. It's like you're trying to communicate. You're trying to build an establishment of communication. You're trying to talk to your child. You're trying to introduce new conceptions to your child. So that means there's a lot of synapses that gets interconnected. A lot of neurons in your brain get interconnected. That's only because the child is able to work on different sets of language development. Now, say for example, if I'm teaching in my class about teddy bear, I just bring a teddy bear and I tell them this is teddy bear. The child learns only that much. Okay? I go to the other class. I do it a little extra. Okay? When I tell about little extra, it's like I add a little bit more of vocabulary. I say, this is teddy bear. His name is Teddy. He's brown in color. Take a look at his eyes. He has two eyes. Touch his nose. His nose. I say teddy bear it's like huge. He's big enough. And I also ask the children to actually feel and touch and experience the fur. Okay? So the moment that you actually do all these things, and tomorrow you bring both the children and you ask them, what is this? One child might say, this is teddy bear. The other child might say, this is teddy bear. He's brown in color. Look at his eyes. Look at his tail. He's so good. He's so big. He's so enormous. I like this. They might start building their own stories. It's only because You created an environment to take everything, isn't it? So that was for today. And in tomorrow's session, I'm going to be taking you through the language milestones, which we are going to be setting for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this learning journey. I hope to seeing you all again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you so much. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.